What if Germany never declared war on America? During WW2, there is a clerk walking down a corridor in the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. The radiators tick and clank against the cold outside. He carries a thin folder under his arm, his shoes quiet on the stone floor, his breath still coming a little fast from the stairs. It is the morning of the 11th of December, 1941, and somewhere behind one of these closed doors, a decision is being made about America. What if Germany never declared war on America during the Second World War? That single question, held inside this single ordinary corridor, inside this single unremarkable man with his folder, is what we are here to think about tonight. It is, to be clear, quite high on the list of improbable divergences. And yet, if you're enjoying this, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you might think. And leave a comment. Where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here. Now, before we go any further, find your pillow and let your head settle into it properly. To take one slow breath in through your nose and let it out through your mouth. Feel your shoulders drop. Let your jaw go soft. Your whole body is heavier than it was a moment ago, sinking down, the mattress holding you completely. Good. You've woken in Berlin, the morning of the 11th of December, 1941. The corridor is warm. The radiators knock and hiss, and the heat coming off them is dry and close, the kind that makes the inside of your nose feel tight. Outside the tall windows, the sky is the color of old pewter, and the streets below are dusted with a fine, hard frost that doesn't look like it will melt before dark. You are a junior clerk in the Chancellery. You are 23 years old, perhaps. You have been awake since before 5. The folder under your arm contains carbon copies of correspondence that no longer matters. Administrative tissue, the kind of paper that fills filing cabinets and is never read again. Your job this morning is to deliver it to a secretary on the 3rd floor, get a signature, and come back. The war, this morning, feels far away. That is the good news. The corridor smells of floor wax and warm radiator dust, and the only sounds are your shoes and the pipes, and somewhere distantly, a telephone ringing twice and then stopping. The Eastern Front is a name on a map. Stalingrad is not yet a word anyone knows. You have not been called up. You are warm. The bad news is the room 3 doors down on your left. There is a typewriter going in there. You can hear it if you stop walking, the quick mechanical clatter of it, the small bell at the end of each line. Someone in that room is typing a speech. The speech will be delivered in a matter of hours at the Kroll Opera House, before the members of the Reichstag, before the cameras and the microphones that will carry it outward into the world. It will be fewer than 4,000 words, and when it is finished, and spoken and broadcast, the shape of the century will have changed. America brought formally into the European war the full weight of its factories and its men, and its ships turned against Germany. The end made not inevitable, perhaps, but closer and heavier and more certain than it was the morning before. That is what is being typed, 3 doors down. You keep walking. You finish your delivery. The secretary signs without looking up. You take the stairs back down, and at the bottom you push through the heavy door and out into the street. The cold hits your face like a wet cloth. Berlin, in December, bites differently from the cold indoors. It has weight to it, a pressure behind the eyes, a tightness in the chest on the first breath. Your coat is not quite thick enough. Nobody's coat is quite thick enough this winter. The street is already moving. Trams groan along their rails, their windows fogged opaque from the breath of passengers inside. The woman pulls a small cart stacked with wrapped parcels, her head down, her boots scraping on the frost-stiffened pavement. 2 soldiers walk past you in the direction of the Tiergarten. their greatcoats the color of old moss, their faces red with cold, talking about something in low voices. You catch one word, Kälte, cold, and then they're past you. The smell of coal smoke sits low over everything. Every chimney in the city is working this morning, the smoke coming off the rooftops in thick gray plumes that flatten out and hang in the still air. And it settles at street level, catches in the back of the throat, leaves a faint taste of something burnt and mineral. You've stopped noticing it mostly, and it is simply what winter in Berlin smells like. There is a bread queue outside a shop on the corner, perhaps 15 people long. Not so bad. 3 weeks ago it was longer. The woman at the end of it stamps her feet against the cold and tucks her chin into the collar of her coat. A child beside her holds her hand and stares at nothing. The queue is quiet. People in queues have stopped talking much. The newsboy works the opposite pavement, holding up a paper, calling out. You can make out Japan and Amerikanische and Pacific. The front pages have run nothing but the Pacific since last Thursday. Pearl Harbor, the American declaration against Japan, the fleet in Hawaii, the map of islands you've never thought about. The papers have photographs of burning ships. The tone in the headlines is triumphant. America distracted, America wounded, America looking west, not east. You buy a copy without quite deciding to. The paper is thin, the ink slightly smudged, and your hands are already too cold to turn the pages easily. What the paper does not say, because it cannot, because to say it plainly would require a kind of honesty the Reich does not deal in. What the paper does not say is that the army is freezing outside Moscow, and you know this the way people in cities know things they are not officially told. Through letters that arrive with sentences blacked out, through men on leave who sit quietly at tables and don't finish their drinks, through the specific shape of what is not being said in official announcements. Operation Barbarossa was supposed to be over by October. It is December. The Wehrmacht is dug into positions it did not plan to hold, in temperatures their equipment was not designed for, in a country that keeps not ending. And it is not only the East. Rommel's Africa Corps, which the newsreels showed advancing into Egypt not so long ago, has been pushed back across the Libyan desert by the British. The U-boats in the Atlantic are sinking tonnage, yes, but they are also being sunk, and there are not enough of them, and the ocean is very large. The Reich this morning is stretched, not broken. Not losing, not in any way the newspapers would print, but stretched. You fold the paper under your arm, next to the empty folder, and you start walking back. You are not in Berlin anymore. You are in Washington, and the cold here is softer, damp rather than cutting, the kind that gets into your collar and stays. And the city smells of wet stone and exhaust, and something electric, the specific charge of a place that has not slept properly in 4 days. It is still the morning of the 11th of December. The Capitol building sits above you on its hill, white and enormous, and somehow both solid and precarious looking, the dome vanishing into low gray cloud at its crown. The steps are busy. Men in overcoats move in and out through the great doors, their breath visible, their faces carrying the particular expression that has been on every face in this city since Sunday, the kind of forward-leaning alertness, jaw set, eyes moving, not panic, something harder and more deliberate than panic. 4 days ago you watched the president go before Congress. You were not in the chamber. Nobody you know was in the chamber. But you were close enough to hear the radio through an open office door, the voice coming through the static, a date which will live in infamy. The words settled over the building like smoke. Within the hour, the vote was in. 82-0 in the Senate, 388-1 in the House. One woman, Jeanette Rankin of Montana, who had also voted against the last war, cast the single dissenting ballot, and when she tried to speak she was drowned out and had to lock herself in a phone booth until the crowd passed. The country wanted Japan. The country got Japan, but Japan is not Germany. This is the political fact that sits under everything this morning, unspoken in the corridors and explicit in the back rooms. The rage that swept through Congress on the 8th was real, and it was unanimous, and it was pointed directly at Tokyo, at the image of those burning ships in Pearl Harbor, at the specific and visceral outrage of a Sunday morning surprise attack. That rage has a direction, changing its direction, turning it westward, toward Berlin, toward a war in Europe that a significant portion of this country spent the better part of 3 years arguing against, would require something different, something more. Franklin Roosevelt knows this. You have not met him. You are a junior staffer, a runner of papers, a holder open of doors, but you know what he knows, the way everyone in this building knows what the man at the top knows. Through the texture of every meeting and memo and quietly urgent telephone call, Roosevelt has been edging this country toward Europe for 2 years. Lend-Lease, the escort convoys, the undeclared naval skirmishing in the Atlantic. He is not an isolationist. He has never been an isolationist. He believes, in whatever way a man of that kind holds beliefs, that a Germany controlling all of Europe is intolerable and permanent, and eventually mortal to the United States. But belief is not a congressional majority. Down the hall, in a room you walk past but do not enter, George Marshall is on the telephone. You hear his voice through the door, not the words, just the register of it, flat and deliberate and carrying no excess weight. The voice of a man who calculates. Marshall has plans. Marshall always has plans. But plans require resources, and resources require appropriations. And appropriations require a public argument that can be won. And this morning that argument, the European argument, the Germany first argument, is harder than it would have been yesterday, because yesterday America was not formally at war with Germany. Today is still yesterday, in that sense. The declaration has not come yet, and you stand in the corridor again. The folder is back under your arm, the bread queue on the corner, the coal smoke, the thin newspaper. All of that fades behind you like a street you've already turned off. You are back inside the chancellery, and the radiators are ticking, and the typewriter behind the door 3 rooms down has gone quiet. Just for a moment. The silence in a corridor when a typewriter stops is a particular kind of silence. Not empty. Waiting. And here, in that pause, let your own body do the same. Feel the weight of your head on the pillow. Really feel it. The pressure at the back of your skull. The way the pillow gives just enough. Cups just enough. Your neck is soft. Your shoulders are somewhere lower than they were a few minutes ago. Notice that. Let them be there. Your breathing has slowed without you asking it to. In through the nose. A pause at the top. Easy, no effort. Out through the mouth, slow and long, longer than the breath in. Your chest rises and falls. The blanket moves with it, barely. The corridor in Berlin is dim and warm. The frosted windows at the far end hold the gray winter light, and it doesn't change, doesn't move. The radiator pipes tick once, twice, then nothing. Your legs are heavy. Your hands are still. The folder doesn't weigh anything at all. Whatever time it is where you are, whatever the clock says, whatever light or dark sits outside your window, it is also the morning of the 11th of December, 1941. And you are standing in a warm corridor, and the most consequential typewriter in the world has just stopped its clatter, and nobody in the building knows yet exactly what the next few hours will carry. Let that uncertainty be restful. Nothing has been decided. The door is still closed. Your jaw goes soft. The muscles behind your eyes let go. The corridor holds you, unhurried, the dry radiator warmth pressing gently against your coat. Breathe in, breathe out. The typewriter does not start again yet. The typewriter starts again. You hear it through the door. Not a resumed dictation, something more tentative than that. A single line typed, then a pause. Another line. The rhythm is different from before, less mechanical, more like someone thinking between keystrokes. The speech is not finished. It is still being shaped. You should be back downstairs, and you don't move. The tripartite pact was signed in Berlin in September of 1940. Germany, Italy, Japan, each agreeing that if any one of them was attacked by a power not yet at war, the others would come to its assistance by all available means. That was the language. Attacked. The word sat at the center of the treaty like a hinge pin, and what hung on it was enormous. The threat of a three-ocean war, meant to give pause to any nation. Read America, considering entering the conflict in Europe or the Pacific. The problem, this particular morning, is Japan. Japan was not attacked at Pearl Harbor. Japan attacked. The pact's obligation ran in one direction only: defend a signatory that had been set upon. It said nothing, explicitly, about what Germany owed a signatory that had done the setting upon. Ribbentrop, who drafted agreements with the enthusiasm of a man who never quite understood them, had built this ambiguity into the structure of the treaty without meaning to. The lawyers in the foreign ministry knew it. A few of them, in quiet offices, had written careful memos about it. The memos existed. They had been read. And what they said, stripped of their diplomatic phrasing, was, legally, Germany is not bound, not moral ones. Morality was not the currency being spent in these rooms, but practical ones, the kind that kept certain men awake and made them careful with their words in meetings. Albert Speer, who thought about production the way other men thought about weather, understood what American factories could do once turned fully to war. The Liberty ships being laid down in American yards, the aircraft, plants in Michigan and California, the rolling mills, the refineries. Germany's economists had run the numbers on American steel capacity and put the papers away without commenting on them to anyone who mattered. Admiral Raeder, who commanded the Navy and understood the Atlantic in a way landbound men did not, had long held that U-boats could strangle British supply lines only if they were not also fighting the United States Navy. These were not voices of resistance. They were voices of calculation. The doubt was not about whether war with America was wrong. It was about whether it was early, because the other thing these men believed, or told themselves they believed, was that the war with America was coming regardless. Roosevelt had been edging toward it for 2 years. The convoys, the Lend-Lease ships, the American destroyers trading fire with U-boats in the middle of the Atlantic. The Reuben James had gone down in October, an American warship sunk by a German torpedo, and Congress had barely blinked. Roosevelt wanted in, the argument ran. It was only a question of pretext. Pearl Harbor had handed him half of one. Berlin, on this morning, still held the other half in its own hands. That is the room you are standing outside. Not a fantasy. Not a counterfactual that requires Germany to become something it was not. A room where a real calculation is being made by real men who already have real doubts left, and where the legal structure of a signed treaty has left a door, genuinely, technically, quietly ajar. The typewriter clatter stops again. The corridor holds its breath. You are still in the corridor. The folder is under your arm. The radiator ticks once, settles. The light through the frosted window at the far end hasn't changed, that flat pewter gray, holding steady, neither brightening nor darkening. It could be any time at all. The door 3 rooms down is closed. You don't know what is behind it. Not exactly. A desk, a lamp, A man with a sheaf of papers and a pen. The typewriter has gone quiet again. And this time, the quiet feels different. Fuller, more final. The way a room sounds after someone has stood up from a chair. The speech is written, or nearly written. Or it is being reconsidered. You don't know. You can't know. Standing here in the corridor with your empty folder and your coat that isn't quite warm enough. Your breath just barely visible in the dry, heated air. The door is wood and it is closed. And behind it, the morning is still deciding something. Your feet are tired. You've been up since before 5. There is a bench at the far end of the corridor, near the frosted window. You don't sit on it. You shouldn't be up here at all, not lingering, not standing in a hallway listening to the absence of a typewriter. But you look at it, dark wood, worn smooth on the seat. It looks like sitting down would cost nothing at all. The light through the window is very soft, and here in this corridor, in this held breath moment before the speech is given, and the century lurches forward, here is where you can let your body do what it has been asking to do for some time now. And your eyelids are heavy, not fighting heavy, simply heavy. The way a warm room makes them, the way a steady, unhurried voice and a corridor with nothing urgent in it makes them. Your breath is slow, in. A long, easy out. The folder weighs nothing. The bench by the window is right there. The door at the end of the hall is still closed. Nothing has been decided yet. The morning is still open. The whole corridor is warm and still and waiting. And so are you. And your body is sinking, softening, the edges of everything going gentle and indistinct. The radiator ticks once more. Then nothing. You are back in a corridor, a different one. The foreign ministry smells of floor wax and cigarette smoke, and something older underneath. Stone, maybe, or the particular staleness of a building that has housed too many important silences. The ceiling is high. Your footsteps don't echo so much as they disappear upward into the cold air above you. It is mid-morning, the same gray light, the same December. 4 hours have passed since the Chancellery corridor. You don't know what happened there. You still don't know, standing here now. But you are here, which means something was left unfinished. Which means the morning is still in the process of becoming itself. Ribbentrop is on the telephone. You can hear his voice through the half-open door to your left. Not the words, the tone. It is the tone of a man receiving an instruction he did not expect and is now in the process of locating a reaction to. Not angry, not relieved, something more careful than either. The long paused. Then the tone changes, lower, flatter, the sound of agreement being performed by someone who does not entirely understand what he is agreeing to, but knows better than to say so. The telephone goes down. The silence that follows is the specific silence of a room where one person is now standing completely still, holding something they have to put somewhere, and not yet knowing where. You are very still in the corridor. The door swings open another few inches. Not all the way, just enough. And you see the edge of a desk, a lamp, a stack of papers with a red ribbon still tied around the top folder. The folder is not open. The note inside it, the formal diplomatic note, the summons that would bring the American chargé d'affaires to this building before lunch, is not being reached for. Someone in the room says a name. Someone else says a number, an article number from a treaty, the tripartite pact, spoken in the clipped way legal language gets spoken when it is being used as a wall to stand behind. Article 3, Mutual Assistance. The signatory who was attacked. Japan was not attacked. Japan attacked. The clause read narrowly, and it can be read narrowly. And today, this morning, that reading has come back down the line, with the weight of an instruction behind it. The clause does not apply. This is the hinge, not a dramatic turning. Just a door being, very quietly, left alone. A note, not typed. A telephone call that ends with the folder still tied shut, and the chargé d'affaires not summoned, and the Reichstag speech not yet written in its final form, not yet the speech that ends with a declaration, because the instruction, the one that just came down the line in Ribbentrop's careful flattened voice, is to wait, reread the pact. Keep the U-boats in the Atlantic, but keep them back from the American coast, back from American hulls. Keep the shadow war a shadow. The room breathes out. You breathe out. The lamp on the desk throws a small yellow circle onto the surface of the tied folder. Outside the window, the Berlin sky is exactly the same pewter gray it was at 5 this morning. Indifferent, holding nothing. The note is not typed. The American chargé d'affaires is sitting in his office across the city, unaware that someone was about to summon him, and then, between one breath and the next, decided not to. The morning continues. In the real timeline, the Reichstag fills at 3 in the afternoon. You know this. You have seen the photographs, the ranked seats, the flags hanging from the ceiling like the walls of some enormous tent. The deputies in their brown uniforms, standing to applaud before he has even reached the podium. The chamber smells of wool and breath, and the particular heat of too many bodies in a winter building, with the radiators on full. The microphone at the podium is a fat silver cylinder, German engineering, built to carry a voice to a nation. The speech runs 2.5 hours. It ends with a declaration. The deputies rise. The sound is enormous. It fills the stone vault of the chamber, bounces off the ceiling, comes back down onto the crowd as its own echo. Then they rise into it again, louder, feeding the room. The stenographer at her small desk to the left of the podium keeps her pen moving through all of it, her wrist steady, transcribing the applause as stormy approval, which is the notation they use, the official notation, as if storms can be recorded in parentheses and kept. That is the real afternoon. In ours, the chamber is quieter. You are in the gallery. The wooden bench beneath you is hard. The varnish worn to a dull amber at the edges, where 10,000 hands have rested over 10,000 sessions. The ceiling above is vast and cold. The flags hang still. No draft reaches them this high. The radiators tick. The deputies arrived at 2. By 1:30, the word had moved through the rows in the way that words move through a crowded room when they are not meant to be spoken aloud. A lean, a murmur, the man reading a folded paper and then folding it smaller. The session would be brief. There would be no major address. A communiqué would be read. The podium stands empty now. The microphone in front of it is a fat silver cylinder, catching the flat December light from the high windows. No one has touched it. The light comes from the wrong angle, and the microphone throws a short, blunt shadow across the wood of the podium. Pointing nowhere, the junior official reads the communiqué from a lectern to the side. His voice is clear and carries no particular weight. Germany stands in full solidarity with its Japanese ally. The treacherous attack upon Pearl Harbor was an affront to the tripartite powers. Germany notes the heroism of Japanese arms. The legal obligations under Article 3 are under active review. The Reich's position toward the United States remains. The word he uses is geklärt, clarified, which means nothing, and is meant to mean nothing, is meant to close the sentence before anything can escape through it. 12 sentences. The deputies do not stand. Some of them shift in their seats. A few exchange looks that are not readable from the gallery. One man in the third row keeps his eyes on the lectern and his hands flat on his thighs, and his face arranged into an expression of careful attention that is also, if you look at it long enough, an expression of a man who has decided to feel nothing until he knows more. The stenographer at her small desk closes her notebook. not dramatically. She simply reaches the end of what there is to transcribe and brings the cover forward and rests her palm flat on it. A soft sound, less than a sound, a pressure, a small settling. The microphone stands untouched. The chamber empties slowly. The afternoon light holds. The Atlantic is 3,000 miles wide, and the White House sits on its western edge, and the President knows, the morning of the 12th, that something has not arrived. He waits for it the way you wait for a sound you expected to hear. A door, a telephone, a footstep on a stair, and instead the house stays quiet around you, and you begin to wonder if you misread the hour. Cables come in through the night. London, Moscow, the embassy in Berlin. The language in the Berlin cable is careful, the kind of careful that has been drafted and redrafted until the original meaning is somewhere underneath the words, like a stone under shallow water, visible but unreachable without getting wet. No declaration, no note delivered, no summons to the Wilhelmstrasse. Roosevelt reads it once, folds it, sets it face down. Outside the Oval Office windows, the December lawn is iron gray. A Marine stands at the south gate in an overcoat, breath coming off him in slow white plumes. The fountain is off for winter. The basin holds a thin skin of ice. The radio address goes out on the 13th. His voice is steady, a particular steadiness that is not the absence of something, but the presence of a discipline applied to something. Japan, the Pacific, the long road, and it will be long, he says, and the word long lands differently than it would have 2 days ago, lands with the specific weight of a word that is doing extra work, covering distance it wasn't originally asked to cover. Congress does not vote a European war. The men in the chamber know what they voted for. Japan, Pearl Harbor, the Pacific. And they know what they have not been given cause to vote for. And in the cloakrooms and the corridors, the conversations are not about Germany so much as about the space where Germany should be standing and isn't. Marshall's office in the munitions building is not a large room for the work it contains. The planning folders are stacked on a side table and on the 2 chairs that are not occupied, and on the edge of the desk where there is room. And the men around him on the morning of the 14th sit with their own copies open and their pencils moving Pacific first, not by doctrine, by simple arithmetic. The enemy that struck you is the enemy you face. The shipping lanes from San Diego and San Francisco, the island chains, the distances measured in weeks of sailing, not days. The folder on the left thickens. The folder on the right, the European one, the cross-channel one, the one with the British Order of Battle tucked inside the back cover, does not close. But the pencil marks that were in ink last week are being moved into pencil now. Dates pushed. A shipping that would have carried an expeditionary force stays in the Pacific calculation. The docks at Liverpool will not see American boots in the numbers anyone had drawn on a map. Marshall says something quiet to the man beside him. The man nods and makes a mark and turns to the next page. Lend-Lease continues. The convoys run, the figures go up, not down. More trucks, more aircraft, more tinned food, more fuel, the industrial weight of a country that is not yet fully at war in Europe, and so can pour its production into ships and material rather than divisions. The aid reaches Britain. It reaches the Soviet Union, the battered, enormous, bleeding Soviet Union, which is doing the thing that nothing else can do, holding the line in the East, chewing through German armies at a rate no planning folder can fully account for. But no American soldier is sailing for Britain. Not yet. The Atlantic stays wide. You don't need to hold any of this. Let it move past you the way water moves past something resting on a riverbed. You can feel the current, the small pressure of it, but you are still. The bed is under you. The pillow is where you put it. Your shoulders are heavy in the good way, the way they get when the body has decided, quietly, on its own, that the work of the day is finished. Breathe in. Breathe out. The weeks are unfolding somewhere far away. Berlin, Washington, the gray Atlantic, and you are here, in the warmth, and the story will continue, without you having to do anything at all except let it. The hinge has turned. You felt it turn. The note that wasn't typed, a microphone that no one touched, the marine breathing white plumes into the December air outside a window, where a different future was already taking shape. That happened. It's done. The world is already moving inside the new shape of itself, and there is nothing urgent in it, nothing that needs you to sit up or hold on. Your jaw loosens. Your hands, wherever they are resting, on the blanket, at your sides, they're soft, not gripping anything, nothing to grip. That's what weeks do. They come one at a time, one morning after another, each one gray or cold or ordinary, in the way that history is mostly ordinary when you are inside it. People eat breakfast. They read the paper. They try to understand what a thing means before they know what it means. That's where we are. January is coming. The Atlantic is still 3,000 miles wide. The convoys are still running. Someone in Marshall's office is still moving pencil marks around a map, and the marks are beginning to mean something different than they did in December. And it will take another few weeks before anyone says it plainly. Let that take its time. Your breathing is slower than it was a minute ago. You can feel that. The way the chest rises a little less, falls a little more, the pause between them, lengthening into something almost restful. The story is still here. You're still here. Nothing is required. January arrives the way January always does, without announcement, without ceremony, just a Tuesday that is somehow colder than the Tuesday before it. You are in a shipyard in Baltimore. The smell reaches you before anything else. Hot metal and coal smoke and the salt mud smell of the harbor underneath everything. The smell of a place that has been working without stopping since before you arrived and will go on working after you leave. The cranes move against a white sky. The noise is enormous. It is not a single noise. It is 100 noises layered over one another, until they become a kind of weather, something you stand inside rather than hear. The hull sits in dry dock, to your left, half-built. The ribs of it rise from the keel in smooth curves, and a man in a welding mask crouches at the joint of 2 steel plates, and the arc of his torch makes a small blue star that is immediately swallowed by the gray morning. This is the machine turning, not toward France, not yet. Toward the Pacific, toward the island chains and the long distances measured in weeks of sailing. Toward the war the country was actually given, but the machine does not know the difference. It knows steel and shift work and the number of hulls it can put in the water by March, by June, by the end of the year. It knows that number is going up. You stand there for a moment and feel the cold through your coat and watch the weld arc flash and go dark and flash again. Off Cape Hatteras, in the real timeline, January is burning. Tankers, one after another, close enough to shore that people stand on the beach at night and watch them go. The orange light on the water, the black smoke rising in columns that stay visible for hours. Operation Drumbeat, Donit's boats running south along the American coast in the first weeks of the year, sinking ships in water barely 50 meters deep, a slaughter so easy that the U-boat commanders call it the happy time and mean it. Here, the order stands: keep off the American coast, to concentrate on the mid-Atlantic gap, the black pit in the middle of the ocean, where air cover from either shore cannot reach, where the convoys run exposed and the hunting is harder and the losses are real, but the cost is also real. British destroyers, Depth charges in heavy seas. U-boats that go down and do not come up. The losses still rise. You read the convoy reports at a desk in an Admiralty annex in London. Cold room, single lamp, a kind of tea that has been steeping too long and is now just hot brown bitterness in a cup. The numbers are bad. Not as bad as the beaches of Hatteras lit orange in the night, but bad, in the steady accumulating way that tonnage losses are always bad. Not a spectacle, just a subtraction, month after month, the difference between enough and not enough, measured in steel hulls and fuel, and the food on someone's table in February. Roosevelt's desk, in the same weeks, holds a different set of numbers. Lend-Lease, the convoys running under American naval escort, now pushed further east than any neutral power has a right to push them. Escort groups that turn back only when the British take over it, and the handoff point keeps moving east, and everyone understands what that means, and no one says it plainly, because saying it plainly would require a vocabulary the moment hasn't yet earned. The quasi-war thickens. It does not snap. A Baltimore shipyard works a second shift, then a third. Somewhere in the mid-Atlantic, a U-boat rides on the surface. It is 3 a.m. The sea is low, a slow black swell, and the stars are the kind you only see this far from land. Dense, uninterrupted, the whole sky working. The cold is serious. The watch officer stands in the conning tower, with his collar up and his binoculars around his neck, and his breath coming in short white pulses that the wind takes immediately. To the north-northeast, lights. A freighter, American flag, almost certainly, the silhouette, the running lights, the course and speed of something moving with the particular unhurried confidence of a vessel that believes it has room to be unhurried. He watches it. The order is clear. It has been clear since December. American hulls. Leave them. The shadow war has a border now, and the border is those lights moving north-northeast through the black water. The order does not require him to feel anything about it, only to hold his position and let them pass. He lets them pass. The lights move, slow at first, the way lights do at distance, and then with the gathering sense of a thing that is committed to its direction. A thing already becoming part of the dark ahead of it. The crewman beside him says nothing. Below, in the boat, the others are sleeping in their narrow bunks. The diesel smell and the condensation and the warmth of too many bodies in a sealed space, the small intimate heat of men at rest. The freighter's lights shrink, become a point, then less than a point. Then the stars close over the place where they were, and the sea is the same in all directions, and the watch officer lowers his binoculars, and the cold settles back around the conning tower, as if nothing passed through it at all. The year ahead is unwritten. You don't have to write it tonight. Your bed is warm. The weight of the blanket is even across your body, your legs, the slow geography of a body that has stopped holding itself up. Your breath has found its own pace now, longer on the out, a natural pause, the chest rising just enough. Your hands are open. The stars are somewhere above you. The sea moves, and you're already drifting. Spring comes slowly to Liverpool. You feel it first as a loosening, the cold still real, still in your hands and your jaw, but no longer the hard committed cold of January. March cold, the kind that reminds you it could still turn. The dock is loud before dawn, not the loud of crowds, the loud of machinery, crane cables under load, the low complaint of a hull shifting against a fender, men calling to each other in short functional words, across distances that don't need full sentences, and you stand on the wet stone of the quayside, and the smell comes up at you all at once. Oil, salt, cold iron, a particular rotten wood and diesel scent of a working port that hasn't stopped working in 3 years. The crates come down in the dark. U.S. Army ordnance, stenciled in black across pale wood. Then another, then a pallet of something heavier. You can hear the difference in the crane, the cable taking the weight differently, the whole arm of the thing describing a slower arc. Food, fuel, parts for things that break and cannot wait for British factories to replace them. A docker near you lights a cigarette and does not offer you one. He watches the crate land, watches the crew begin to secure it, takes a long pull and lets the smoke go into the cold air above him. American? Yes. He nods like this is not new information, like he is confirming something he already knew. He has been watching crates like this arrive for over a year now. The markings change. Sometimes food, sometimes engine parts, sometimes things with serial numbers and no other label. But the shape of it is always the same. The American dock workers who loaded these crates in Baltimore or New York or Philadelphia will never know where they landed, will never stand on this particular wet stone at this particular hour, with the Irish Sea somewhere in the dark behind the harbor mouth. The freighter is a British vessel. Her crew is British. The escort that brought her across, Canadian warships and a single American group that handed off at a line somewhere in the mid-Atlantic, turned and went back. That handoff is invisible from here. What you see is the cargo. What you do not see is the conversation about where American responsibility ends and British responsibility begins, and what happens to a ship in the gap between them. The gap is still there. The U-boats know about the gap. A crane swings back empty, cable swinging loose, and the sound of it carries out over the water. The sky above the cranes is beginning to show. Not light yet, just the sky becoming a different kind of dark, a dark with direction in it, a dark that is going somewhere. Along the dock, braziers burn at intervals, and the men near them stand with their backs to the heat and their faces to the work, and the crates keep coming down. The holds of the freighter accept them, one by one, and somewhere behind you, the city is beginning to wake. This is not victory. Not yet. But it is not defeat either. It is the particular condition of a country that has decided to remain, that has looked at the available options and chosen this one. Cold docks before dawn, borrowed equipment, a war measured in tonnage and patience, and the willingness to keep showing up for the next ship, and the next cargo, and the next crossing. The docker finishes his cigarette, drops it, steps on it, goes back to work. The destroyer smells of fuel oil and wet wool, and the particular staleness of men living inside a steel hull for weeks at a stretch. You are on the bridge of USS Gleaves, mid-Atlantic, latitude undisclosed, March 1942. The horizon is gray in every direction, not the gray of a specific weather system moving through, the gray of a permanent condition, a sky and sea that have agreed on a color and are keeping it. The convoy is 31 ships. You can count them from here, just in the flat morning light, the shapes of freighters and tankers arranged in columns, holding their spacing, moving at the speed of the slowest vessel, which is always the speed a convoy moves at. Your job is to get them to a line. The line has no name on any public document. It is a longitude. East of it, the Royal Navy takes responsibility. West of it, you do. You hand off and turn around and come home and do it again. And the question of what happens to a German U-boat commander who puts a torpedo into an American warship, while both governments are nominally at peace, is a question that has been answered once already. The Reuben James went down with 115 men in October, and the answer was not war, out formally. The answer was a cable and a protest and a careful statement, and the convoys kept moving. So you watched the horizon. At 0340, a sonar contact comes in, sharp, definite, moving at an angle that intersects the convoy's path in 11 minutes. The captain does not raise his voice. Orders go down the chain in a tone you might use to discuss weather. The destroyer accelerates, the contact maneuvers, and you drop a pattern of depth charges, and the ocean behind the ship lifts in a series of white columns, water thrown upward, and then falling back, and the sonar operator reports the contact has gone quiet. Gone quiet could mean destroyed, could mean the commander went deep and cut his engines, and is waiting. No debris surfaces. The watch log records, contact lost, result uncertain. 3 weeks later, Berlin sends a cable to Washington. The language is formal and cold. It describes American naval vessels operating in coordination with British forces. It demands the United States honor the boundaries of genuine neutrality. It stops short of a direct threat, because the men who drafted it have been told, quietly, by people who understand the arithmetic of American industry, to stop short of a direct threat. Roosevelt reads it in the morning. He reads it the way you read something you expected to arrive, something you have already composed a response to before the envelope opened. His reply goes back through the State Department, and it says, with great precision, that American vessels are protecting American interests in international waters, that Lend-Lease is a matter of American domestic law, and that the United States government notes Germany's concern. Notes it, does not act on it. In his private correspondence, in letters not shown to the press, the President is more direct. He writes that he cannot bring public opinion to war on a torpedo near miss, that the Navy itself cannot confirm hit anything. He writes that the aid must keep moving. He writes that the situation is what it is, and he is working with what he has. A convoy reaches the handoff line on a Tuesday, 30 ships out of 31. 1 engine casualty, turned back on day 2. The Royal Navy signals receipt. Gleaves turns west, back into the permanent gray, toward home. The airfield at Mildenhall smells of cut grass and aviation fuel. It is May 1942. The grass between the hard standings has been mown recently. Someone's idea of order imposed on a place that is otherwise controlled chaos. Mud tracks cut across it, where vehicles have ignored the paths. The Lancaster sits on the apron, with its port inner engine removed, the nacelle open, 2 men inside it to their shoulders, doing something that requires one of them to occasionally swear. You walk past them. The briefing hut is wooden, heated by a single stove that is doing its best. 32 aircrew inside, mostly RAF, a handful of RKF, 1 New Zealander who has not spoken since you came in. The target tonight is Cologne. Again, the strategic logic is consistent. Hit the industrial centers. Hit the thing that feeds the factories, that feed the army that is killing people east of Warsaw. The briefing officer points at the map. You look at the route markers and do the arithmetic that all bomber crew eventually learn to do. The arithmetic of flak corridors and fighter coverage, and the distance between you and the target, and the distance between the target and home, and what the fuel load gives you in terms of time to play with if something goes wrong. Not much. The New Zealander studies his hands outside across the airfield. In a separate dispersal, 3 B-17s sit under partial canvas covers. American aircraft. American markings, though the markings are subdued, less bright than they would be in a different telling of this story, in a world where the Declaration came through in December, and the 8th Air Force arrived in force. These 3 are something else. Training detachment. The paperwork says, the observer mission. The American crews who flew them over have been here 6 weeks and have attended 2 briefings and have not yet flown a combat sortie. One of them is standing by the fence. He watches the Lancasters. He is young, they are all young, but he looks it more than summed, and he has his hands in his jacket pockets, and he watches the ground crews work in the late afternoon light with the expression of a man watching something he is Almost part of, but not quite. He is not flying tonight. His orders say observer. His orders say liaison. His orders say evaluate British doctrine and equipment and report back. His orders do not say stand at a fence and watch 32 men climb into aircraft that will fly for 8 hours in the dark over heavily defended territory while you remain on the ground. His orders don't have to say that. He is already standing at the fence. The Lancaster crews board at dusk. You watch them go up the ladders, the gunners first, then the navigators, then the pilots last, or second to last, each man's body disappearing into the aircraft in the particular way of people who have done this enough times that the movement is efficient, but not casual. Not casual. They know the aircraft. They know the route. They know what the flak looks like over the Ruhr at altitude, and what it sounds like when a piece of it comes through the fuselage. The engines start, one by one. The sound builds until it is the whole airfield, until your chest takes it in as pressure rather than sound. The Lancasters taxi. They go. The American at the fence watches them until the last navigation light disappears into the east. And then he stays there a moment longer, looking at the dark they went into. And then he turns and walks back toward the dispersal, where his 3 half-covered B-17s are sitting quiet in the grass. The airfield goes quiet. The stove ticks in the empty briefing hut. Someone left a mug on the table. The tea in it has gone cold. Listen to the silence the engines left behind. Not true silence, never that. There is always wind, always some distant vehicle, always the sound of a war being administered. But the particular quiet that follows 32 men departing for the dark. The grass is wet under your boots. You find yourself just breathing. Let that settle now. Let the long Atlantic year settle with it. The cold docks, the gray sea, the depth charges falling into water that gives nothing back. All of it real, all of it already done, already past, already folded into the long record of things that happened while most people were asleep. You don't have to carry any of it. Feel the weight of the blanket across your chest. That specific, familiar weight. Not heavy, just there, warm and present. Your shoulders are on the mattress. Let them go a little further. There's always more to release than you think. Some last held tension in the muscle along the top of your back. Something your body has been managing quietly, without telling you. Let it go now. Let the bed take it. Your jaw, your hands. The breath comes in without you asking it to. Goes out the same way. Your body knows how to do this, has always known. You just have to stop interrupting it. The aircrew are somewhere over the channel now. The convoy is somewhere in the permanent gray. The clerk is somewhere in Berlin, walking a corridor, carrying a folder, living inside a world that is still making its shape. And you are here, warm, still. The mattress holds you the way a harbor holds a ship, not dramatically, not with any particular effort, just with the steady, unhurried fact of its presence. Your breath slows another degree. The stove ticks, the tea goes cold. Somewhere, a Lancaster is climbing through cloud into the open dark above it, and the stars up there are sharp and cold, and very far from everything. But you are not there. You are here. Heavy, warm, drifting. The desert smells of nothing until the wind moves, then it smells of everything at once. Hot stone, old smoke, the particular sweetness of something that burned days ago and left a residue in the sand that the heat keeps releasing. You stand outside a signals tent at a forward position somewhere west of El Alamein, and the smell comes and goes with the wind, and you learn, after a few days here, to read the wind for what it carries. October 1942. The 8th Army has just broken through. The battle took 12 days. 12 days of artillery that the men here describe with a flatness that tells you the words available for it are not adequate. Not because they're being modest, but because adequate words don't exist. Montgomery's barrage opened on the 23rd, and the sound of it, one veteran corporal tells you, was not like sound, was like the air changing its nature. Rommel's line broke. Now the pursuit. You ride west in the back of a truck with 4 other men, and the road, such as it is, more track than road, defined more by absence of mines than presence of surface, unsettles the truck constantly, and you brace with your knees and watch the desert go by in the flat white November light. The Africa Corps is retreating. But retreating is not the same as broken. Rommel moves with the economy of a man who has done this before, who understands that space is a resource, who trades ground for time, and time for the chance to regroup somewhere the British supply line can't quite reach. His columns pull back in good order. Rearguard actions flare and subside. The Eighth Army pushes, presses, finds resistance, works around it, pushes again. The problem is the far end. In another telling of this story, there would be Americans coming ashore right now. Casablanca, Oran, Algiers, the western door swinging open while the eastern door pushes in. Rommel caught between 2 forces, his line of retreat narrowing toward Tunisia, the whole campaign compressed into months rather than seasons. That door is closed. Not because anyone decided Rommel should be spared, because the men who would open it are fighting in the Pacific, and the men who might have escorted the transports are not at war with the country whose submarines would sink them, and the politics of landing American troops in French North Africa without the full machinery of a declared war behind it. Roosevelt's lawyers have looked at this, and the answer is, not yet. The British know. You see it in the way the staff officers talk about the western flank. Not with bitterness, not quite, but with a particular careful neutrality that costs something to maintain or manage. A major tells you, one evening, outside Mersa Matruh, looking west into the dark, where Rommel's fires are small and far. And he says it the way people say things they intend to be true. The convoy of prisoners comes through in the afternoon, German and Italian both, walking in the flat, resigned way of men who have been fighting in a desert for a year and are now finished with it. They are dirty, tired, not defiant, not broken, just stunned. A British private hands a German sergeant a cigarette. The German takes it. Neither man speaks. The sand shifts across the road between them, fine and constant, covering and uncovering the same stones, the same ground, the same pale track leading west toward a horizon that keeps receiving the retreating army and giving nothing back. The road north out of Avaz is not a road yet. It is becoming one. You watch it happen in real time. The engineers moving ahead of the supply columns, laying gravel over mud, bridging the soft places, cutting into hillside where the gradient demands it. The work never stops. Day shift hands to night shift, and the night shift works by the light of portable lamps that make yellow islands in the enormous dark of the Iranian plateau. You are standing at a staging yard outside the port as a Studebaker rolls off the dock ramp under its own power. Then another after that. American trucks, the smell of new rubber and engine grease still on them, barely touched by the salt crossing. The Soviet transport officer with a clipboard walks the line of them, marking something down, moving to the next one, not looking up. He has the manner of a man who has been sent here to receive a number, and is going to receive that number correctly, or not at all. The number is growing. In the first months of the war, this route, the Persian corridor, the land passage from Gulf ports north through Iran and into Soviet territory, was an idea more than a supply line. Now it is functioning. The bottleneck is not the ships or the cargo. The bottleneck is always the road, always the bridge, always the 100 miles of mountain between the lowland heat and the Soviet border. The engineers are solving it mile by mile. You walk the staging yard in the afternoon heat, October heat, still serious, the kind that sits on the back of your neck and makes you aware of your own water, crates stacked in rows, food, vehicle parts, radio equipment, field telephone wire on wooden spools as tall as your chest. Further along, under canvas, ammunition. Further still, aircraft in crates, unassembled, waiting for the next leg north, where Soviet ground crews will open the boxes and build the planes from their component parts in the cold. A British liaison officer falls into step beside you. More than last month. Yes, more than the month before that, too. He glances at the Studebakers still coming off the ramp, one every few minutes, steady as a clock. Somewhere, a decision got made about where this goes instead. He doesn't say instead of what. He doesn't have to. And you both know what isn't accumulating in English ports right now. The weight of an American army in preparation, the specific logistical mass of a force being assembled for a European landing. That weight is here instead, redistributed, not lost, not abandoned, just moving through a different door. Whether that is better or worse depends entirely on where you are standing. If you are standing in Stalingrad and the rubble of the tractor factory, in the basement of a building that has changed hands 4 times since September, with a Soviet sergeant who has been fighting in this specific city since August, then what matters is the truck that arrives with the food and the ammunition and the winter boots. The truck arrives. It is a Studebaker. The sergeant does not know what a Studebaker is. He knows what the truck contains, and he knows it came from somewhere far away, and he knows his men will eat tonight. The road north takes the next column at dusk. Headlights on, engines working against the gradient, the loads rocking gently on the new gravel surface the engineers finished 3 days ago. The plateau darkens around them. The stars come out, sharp and cold and very numerous. The trucks keep moving. The freighter pulls away from the dock in the last of the light. Love. You watch from the quayside. The cranes are still working. They work through every hour, shaded lamps casting small yellow pools on the wet stone below each hook. But the rhythm has changed. Daytime is urgency. The evening is persistence. The same work. Quieter. The shouted coordination replaced by signals and hand gestures, and the particular understanding of men who have been doing this long enough to need fewer words. The ship's stern light moves out into the river. The Mersey is dark and wide, and the light crosses it slowly, smaller by the minute, until it is just a point among other points. The lights of vessels anchored midstream, the far shore, the low sky above Birkenhead, holding the last gray of the day. You breathe in, salt, diesel, the cold off the water. Your shoulders drop. You didn't notice they were up. The year has been long. Not in the way of bad years, not entirely, in the way of years that asked something of everyone who moved through them, and kept asking, month after month, without any clear promise of an answer. The convoys kept running. The trucks kept rolling north through Iran. The Lancasters kept climbing into the dark above the channel. The engineers kept laying gravel over the mountain mud. All of it still moving. Your feet are cold through your boots. Your hands in your pockets are warm. The crane nearest you swings back empty. Cable loose, and the sound of it fades out over the water. Somewhere down the dock, a chain drops against stone. A single clatter, then nothing. The river takes the sound and smooths it out. Your eyes are heavy, not the heavy of tiredness fighting you, the other kind. The kind that is the body finally deciding that the work is done for now, that the watch can be handed off, that the ship is in the river and the road is north, and the convoy is somewhere in the gray Atlantic doing what convoys do. The stern light is gone. The river holds its dark. You breathe out. Long, slow. The lamp above the quayside buzzes faintly in the cold air. The water moves against the stone below you, regular as breath, patient as anything. The cold gets in through the bottom of the pit first. That is the thing nobody tells you. You expect it from the air, from the wind that comes off the steppe, with nothing to slow it for 500 kilometers. But the cold that matters comes up through the earth, through the frozen ground you have been lying on since before midnight, through the thin layer of straw you packed under your coat when there was still straw to be had. Your feet stopped hurting 2 hours ago. That is not good. You know it is not good. Sergeant Volkov told you what it means when they stop hurting, and you have not forgotten, but there is nothing to do about it in the dark, so you tuck them tighter beneath you and wait. The tea is almost gone. You press the bread against the tin cup until it softens enough to eat. Rye bread, dense and slightly sour, and the tea is weak enough to see through, but warm. The warmth moves down your throat and sits in your chest like a small coal, and you hold very still so it does not move. Across the frozen river, the German lines are quiet tonight. They have been quiet for 3 weeks now. Not the quiet of rest. You have learned the difference, but the quiet of an army that has stopped believing in the next morning. And you can feel it in the silences between their artillery, in the way the firing comes later each day, in the gaps where the resupply flights used to drum overhead. And now there is only the wind. You do not know the name von Paulus. You know the Sixth Army, the way you know a storm, by what it does, by what it has taken. Your regiment came into the city in September with 412 men. You have stopped doing the arithmetic. What you know is this: there are more of you than there were. That is the fact nobody in Berlin counted correctly. They looked at maps. They measured distances, fuel consumption, rail gauges. They did not count correctly the number of times a Soviet conscript from Saratov or Chelyabinsk, or a village so small it has no rail stop, would choose to stay in a basement, in a city that was already rubble. Hold a stairwell, hold a factory floor, hold 8 square meters of riverbank, because the alternative was to let the thing through, the thing that burned your neighbor's house, the thing that took your brother in the first week. You are 17. This is your second winter. You have calluses on your trigger finger and a knowledge of artillery sound that you were not born with, that no one should have to be born with, that you carry now like an extra organ. The bread is gone. You hold the empty cup. A flare goes up on the far bank, German, pale green, and lights the snow between the lines for 15 seconds. Nothing moves. The flare falls. Dark again. Somewhere to your left, Dmitri is sleeping. You can hear him breathe, slow and deep, in that particular way that used to make you jealous in the first weeks when sleep would not come. Now you are glad someone can do it. It means things are stable enough for sleep. It means the line is holding. The Sixth Army is caught in the pocket, has been caught since November, is dying by degrees in the cold that is also your cold. That belongs to no one and everyone. Your feet are still numb. The steppe breathes its long breath over the rim of the pit. You wait for morning. You do not cross the lines. The story does. Kiev in February 1943 smells of coal smoke and something underneath it, something animal and damp that no amount of coal smoke covers. The streets are wide, the way Soviet planners made them wide, and the Wehrmacht has been here long enough to put signs up in German, long enough for the signs to weather. The poster on the wall of what used to be a post office shows a soldier against a sunrise. His jaw is clean, his uniform is clean. The edges of the poster have come away from the paste and curl inward in the cold, and the bottom third hangs loose, folded against itself, so the soldier appears to end at the waist. Nobody has repasted it. A year ago, someone would have repasted it. At the rail station, a train comes in from the west. It is a long train. The carriages marked for supplies are lighter than the carriages marked for personnel. And the personnel carriages are not carrying soldiers going east. They are carrying soldiers going the other way. And the soldiers are not carrying rifles. They are carrying their arms across their chests, or held out from their bodies at angles that have no other explanation. The man directing traffic on the platform is 53 years old. You can see it in his neck, in the way he holds his clipboard with both hands to steady it. A year ago, he was running a hardware concern in Düsseldorf. He is not a soldier in any practical sense. He is a body wearing a uniform, and the uniform fits poorly across the shoulders, and the Wehrmacht put him here because the men who used to do this job are in one of the longer carriages. A train empties slowly. In a field kitchen, 40 kilometers east of the city, 2 cooks divide a pot that should serve 30 into portions for 38, a bread ration. Came in 3 days ago and was already the smaller ration, the one introduced in October, the one that followed the smaller ration introduced in July, and each reduction arrived with an explanation. The explanations have stopped arriving. The men eat and say nothing, and hold their bowls until the last of the heat is gone. The oil situation is the explanation that nobody states aloud. Germany runs on Romanian crude and synthetic production, and what can be seized, and all of it together is not enough, has not been enough since the summer. It has been the ceiling on every plan, drawn on every map, in every headquarters, from Rastenburg to Rostov. The panzers that outran their fuel in 1942 and stopped in the dust and the heat. They did not stop because of Washington. Washington's status, whether formal or shadow, does not fill a fuel depot. The structural fact predates the divergence and outlasts it. The Reich cannot outproduce the combined weight of what is arrayed against it. This is not a question of American boots on French soil. It is a question of barrels and tons and the arithmetic of industrial capacity, and the arithmetic is settled. The war continues, only differently. No American divisions are massing in England. No planning staffs are arguing about landing beaches on the Normandy coast. The weight that would have pressed from the west is absent, and Germany can move certain divisions, redeploy certain assets, breathe on one flank. But the eastern flank does not breathe. The eastern flank is the pit in the frozen ground. The eastern flank is the boy from Saratov with the empty cup, still waiting, and there are millions of him, and they are not finished. You pull your coat tighter and rest your back against the pit wall. The German lines are still quiet. The flare is long gone. The dark has settled back in over the snow like a hand pressing down, even and complete. And for a moment, just this moment, the war holds its breath with you. Dimitri's breathing is slow and regular beside you. The cold is still there. It does not leave. But your body has made its accommodation with it, the way bodies do, and there is a kind of stillness in that, a kind of permission. Your shoulders drop a centimeter. Your jaw unclenches. You did not know your jaw was clenched. The tea is gone, but the cup is still warm against your palms. You hold it. The step is enormous and dark and silent in every direction. And the war is in it and around it, and you are in it too. But right now the guns are quiet, and Dimitri is breathing, and the bread did what bread does, and somewhere in the space between your last thought and the next one, your eyelids go heavy. Not sleep. Not yet. Something just before it. The kind of stillness that comes when the body has been cold for a long time, and then finds one small, warm thing to hold on to and decides, quietly, without asking permission, to stop bracing. Your feet are still numb. Your back aches where the frozen earth presses up. None of it is gone. But for this moment, It asks nothing of you. You are not in that pit. You are in your bed, right now, in this century, in this room, in the particular dark that belongs only to where you are. Your pillow is under your head. Your blanket is over you. The temperature around you is the temperature you chose. Take one slow breath, all the way in. Feel your chest rise, your ribs expand, the air go cool in your throat. Let it out. The year is about to turn in the story. Things are moving, slowly, in the way that enormous things move. Not with a bang, but with the grinding of weight shifting, ice beginning, somewhere deep and slow, to crack. But not yet. For now, the guns are quiet. For now, just breathe. The wheat is tall enough in July to hide a man lying flat. You know this because you have been lying flat in it for 11 minutes, watching the tree line to the west, listening to a sound that has no single source. It comes from the ground itself, a low, continuous pressure against your sternum, as though the earth has a pulse, and the pulse is wrong. Then the first one comes through the tree line, a Panzer IV, then two more behind it, then a Tiger, the big one, the one whose tracks leave marks wide as a man's arm span. The wheat bends in front of them before the tanks reach it. Pushed down by the air the armor displaces. You press your face into the dirt and count. You stop counting at 30. The ground shakes continuously now. Not the sharp percussion of artillery, but something sustained. A vibration that loosens the soil around your elbows and fills your mouth with the taste of iron and chalk. The tigers move at walking pace. They do not need to hurry. They weigh 57 tons, and they know it. What they do not know, what the men inside them, peering through their vision slits at the wheat and the distant rise of ground, cannot yet see, is what is waiting on the other side of that rise. Zhukov knew they were coming. The intelligence came through in April. The plan, the axis of attack, the timing. The Red Army spent 3 months digging, not advancing, not retreating, digging, trenches behind trenches. Minefields, 6 belts deep, anti-tank guns registered on every piece of dead ground, a defense so layered that breaking through one line means arriving, exhausted and thinned, at the next one, and the next, until the weight of the thrust has bled itself out against prepared earth, and the men who know how to hold it, the tigers, crest the rise. The anti-tank guns open up. You do not watch. You press your face down and feel the wheat stems against your cheek, rough and dry and smelling of summer, and you wait for the noise to become something your mind can organize into sequence. It does not. It is simultaneous and total. The crack of the guns, the clang of rounds against armor, the deeper sound of a vehicle that has stopped being a vehicle, the secondary explosions that follow that sound. By 2 or 3 seconds, the screaming that you have learned to locate by direction and pitch and meaning, and that you still cannot be ready for. The battle at Kursk runs for 7 days. The furthest the southern pincer gets is 12 kilometers. 12 kilometers of Soviet soil, bought with the best armored force Germany can field in the summer of 1943. The last strategic offensive the Wehrmacht will attempt on the Eastern Front. When the attack stalls, Zhukov counterattacks. The front does not hold. It rolls, slowly, in the way that costs the most, through August and into autumn, through Kharkov again, through the bend of the Dnieper, through the grinding arithmetic of an army that has accepted what it must spend to win, and has enough left to spend it. In the West, RAF Lancasters fly to Hamburg in July and August. The raids burn long sections of the city. The damage is severe. But there are fewer of them than there should be. The round-the-clock rhythm, the American B-17s, arriving by day while the RAF hits by night, the relentless compression of German industry that belongs to another version of this year. That is not happening here. German factories run another shift. The wheat burns in the salient. Both things are true. The sea here is a different color than you expected. You have been in North Africa long enough to stop noticing the sand, long enough for the sand to be simply the ground. But the water between the African coast and the island to the north is a blue so particular and concentrated it still catches you each morning when you come up from below decks. Not the gray-green of the Channel, not the brown churn of the Thames estuary, where you watched troop transports load in the rain. This is a blue that seems lit from underneath. The island is Sicily. The date is late August 1943, 6 weeks later than the other version of this story. The Eighth Army has been at it since the middle of July, since the landing craft ground up onto beaches that the planners had photographed from altitude, and the photographs had not conveyed the gradient of or the weight of fire coming from the high ground behind them. The Americans are in the Pacific. The Canadians are here, and the British, and the weight of it falls differently without the other half of what was planned. You are a signaller attached to a forward artillery unit. Your boots are worn through at the left heel, and you have a blister that is blistered again over the scar of the first one. The hills of Sicily do not end. That is the tactical fact nobody in the briefing quite prepared you for. You take one ridge and the next. One is already occupied and above you, and the men who occupy it have had time to register their mortars on the approach, which means you already know the sound the approach makes before you have walked it, because the sound comes to find you first. Monty's army moves methodically. That is the word the dispatches use, methodically. The men use other words. You take Catania in the third week of August, and you take it street by street, the way the Russians took Stalingrad, though nobody says that aloud, though the comparison lives in the spaces between what people say. The rubble is pale limestone, not brick, and it smells different. Dust and dried citrus, and something sweet underneath that you never identify. By September, the island is secured. The losses are higher than the estimates. The estimates were made for a different operation, one with more weight behind it, and the estimates were wrong, and the losses are a fact now, the kind of fact that gets written into letters that adjutants post home, that arrives folded in envelopes on kitchen tables, in Leeds, and Glasgow, and Hamilton, Ontario. Across the strait, Italy watches. Mussolini has been watching for months, watching the island fall ridge by ridge, watching his German partners move divisions through the Brenner Pass that are officially there to help and are practically there to ensure the peninsula doesn't make a decision. Berlin doesn't sanction. The faction that wants out of the war has been growing since North Africa, since before that, since the first winter in Russia, when the Italian Expeditionary Corps came back in pieces. But the thing that was going to tip it, the American weight, the speed of the collapse, the sense that the door was closing fast, and the choice was now. That pressure is different here, slower. The regime wobbles without quite falling. The king watches the Germans in the north and waits. In a requisitioned farmhouse above the Strait of Messina, you eat tinned peaches with a spoon bent at the handle from some previous use, and watch the Italian mainland in the late light, 4 kilometers away, across the blue water, close enough to see the color of the cliffs. The mud here is a specific shade of gray-brown that stains through to skin. You have been wearing the same boots for 6 weeks, and the leather has taken the color of the ground so completely that in low light your feet disappear into it. The forest smells of pine resin and something darker underneath. Black earth turned over, the particular smell of soil that has not seen air for a long time and now has. It is June 1944. You are moving west. That is the fact that organizes everything else. West. Every road, every rail line, every river crossing, every burned bridge that the engineers rebuild in hours that would have taken days in another year. All of it is west. A briefing, such as it was, used the word Bagration, a general's name, a dead general, a general who died in 1812, holding a position that needed holding. You were told this. You do not know why you were told this, except that perhaps the name was meant to mean something about holding and dying and what comes after. The offensive is named for a man who stopped something. It is being used to end something. You are an infantry sergeant now. The promotion came in March, written on a slip of paper handed to you by a lieutenant who did not look old enough to hand promotions to anyone. 3 of the men in your section have been with you since Stalingrad. 3 of them you met in April. The difference is visible in small ways. The way the older ones eat, the way they find ground, the economy of every movement. The younger ones will learn, or they will not. On 23 June, the artillery begins and does not stop. You have been near artillery before. You know the varieties, the ranging shots, the fire for effect, the counter battery, the rolling barrage. What begins on the 23rd is not a variety. It is a condition, a weather system, something that alters the pressure in your ears and chest and makes normal silence afterwards feel like a physical absence. 6,000 guns across a 300-kilometer front. The German Army Group Center receives it, what was Army Group Center, and you move forward through positions that have ceased to be positions, through the geometry of what was a defensive line that is now simply ground with more metal in it than ground usually has. The first day, you move 12 kilometers. This is not your record. In the second week, it will not be close to your record. The Germans are running. Not all of them. Pockets hold, rear guards fight for individual crossroads with a ferocity that costs you people you cannot afford to lose. And you lose them anyway. Mark the location in the part of your mind that keeps these things and move forward. But the shape of the front is moving west at a rate that has no precedent in your experience of this war. And your experience of this war is now 3 years old. Minsk falls on 3 July. You are not in Minsk when it falls. You are 20 kilometers east of it, waiting for the roads to clear. When they clear, you move through the city, and there is not much to move through. The rubble is old rubble from 1941, and the new rubble sits on top of it in layers you can read like a record. People come out of cellars. They look at you the way people look when they have been underground for a long time and are not yet certain the surface is safe. By August, the front is at the edge of Poland. The river here is narrower than the Volga. Everything is narrower than the Volga. You have come to measure distance in rivers. The Don, the Dnieper, the Bug, each one a little smaller, a little further west, each one requiring the same calculation of bank and current and what is waiting on the other side. You do not know the name of this one. It does not matter. It is a river in Poland, and you are on the east bank, and the Germans are on the west bank, and tomorrow, or the day after, the engineers will do what the engineers do, and you will cross it. Tonight, you are in a pit again. Different earth, the steppe clay is behind you now, somewhere back across the months and the rivers. This soil is darker, looser, and when you dug it, gave way in a different way, almost willing. The smell of it is different too, richer, wetter, something alive in it even now, even in August, even in a war. The farmer's field, a barn that was still standing, and someone had the sense to grab an armful before the unit moved through. You press your back against the pit wall and the straw is between you and the earth, and that small layer is the difference between sleeping and not sleeping. Dmitri is still alive, and you have stopped being surprised by this. You have started, very carefully, to expect it. The river moves in the dark below you, that quiet sound of water finding its way regardless, a sound that was here before the war and will be here after it, steady and indifferent, and somehow exactly right for this moment. Your feet are not numb tonight. That is new. Summer did that, gave your feet back to you. You hold them inside your boots. and feel them present, warm, yours, and the feeling moves up through your legs and into the place behind your ribs where the cold used to live. And you breathe out slowly and let your shoulders settle into the straw. The guns are quiet. The river moves. Your eyes close not as a decision, but as a consequence of the straw, of the warmth, of 300 kilometers of ground now behind you, of a war that is still going and will still be going tomorrow, but is not asking anything of you in this particular dark. The tram rocks you awake. Morning light comes through the glass at a low angle, the kind of light that has no warmth in it yet, and you blink at it and feel the seat beneath you. Wooden slats, worn smooth by years of other people sitting here before the war, during it, after it, and you watch the city move past the window. Hamburg, what is left of it. The rebuilt sections are easy to spot. The brick is too clean, the mortar lines too white, the windows too uniform. They went up fast, and they look it. Functional, 4-story, the same repeated face for 100 meters, and then another 100. The ruins they replaced are still visible in the gaps between them. A wall standing without a building behind it, a set of steps that leads to air. The city is a mouth with new teeth and old gaps, and it does not yet know which it is more. A Soviet flag hangs from the post office, red, the hammer and sickle, moving slightly in the gray morning. You have been here long enough that you no longer notice it the way you once did, but today for some reason you do. The weight of the cloth, the deliberate red of it against the pale Hamburg sky. The tram stops. 2 soldiers board, young, coats properly buttoned, rifles slung across their backs the correct way. They take the seats near the door and say nothing, and the other passengers do not look at them, which is its own kind of looking. You turn back to the window. The Ulster is still there. Water does not care about occupation, and the lake sits in the middle of the city the same as it always did, flat and gray this morning. A few birds low over the surface. Somebody is cycling along the far bank. A woman with a basket. The ordinary details of a morning, arranged around the fact of everything else. You think about the Rhine. The division was not drawn there in the end. It came down further west, following the lines of where the armies stopped when the collapse came, the grinding Soviet advance from the east, and the British holding the coast and the north, and the negotiations in whatever room negotiations happen in when everyone is exhausted, and the shooting has mostly stopped. The line that resulted is not clean. Lines never are. But it is a line, and you are on this side of it. The tram passes a school, children in the yard, coats on against the October cold, a game that involves a great deal of running and no apparent rules. One of them looks up at the tram and raises a hand, not waving exactly, just noting it, and goes back to running. The soldiers near the door talk quietly between themselves. You do not speak enough Russian to follow it. Something about tonight, maybe. You catch the word for food, or you think you do. They laugh at something. A short private laugh, and the shorter of the two looks out the window at the street, and his expression is not menacing or triumphant. He looks, frankly, like someone who would rather be somewhere else. You understand that. The tram rocks on. Outside, a baker opens a shutter. A man in a gray coat reads a notice posted on a wall. A child chases a dog around a corner, and both of them vanish. The city is cold, and patched, and occupied, and it is, nonetheless, morning. You breathe against the window, and the glass fogs slightly where your breath lands. The tram reaches your stop, and you step down onto the pavement. Cold comes up through your shoes immediately, the kind of cold that lives in stone, not weather. The city's own cold, stored through summer, released now. You pull your coat closed and walk. The office is 3 blocks east. You know the route well enough that your feet do their own work while your eyes go elsewhere. past the chemist that reopened last spring, past the wall where the notices go up. Requisition orders, registration requirements, the small administrative grammar of occupation, and past the gap where number 14 used to be, which is now a rectangle of newer brick at the base, an open sky above, and a single iron railing still bolted to nothing. The New Mexico test, the summer of 1945. You heard about it the same way everyone here heard about it. A week after it happened, through a British radio bulletin, a voice describing a desert in a country you had never been to, and a light that could be seen for 200 miles. Then Hiroshima, then Nagasaki, and then Japan was done, and the Pacific War was done, and the Americans had the thing and nobody else did, and the war in Europe was already ending by other means. The Soviets pressing west across Poland, the British holding in the north, the Wehrmacht dissolving from the feet up like something left too long in water. America arrived late on this continent. Not absent, the guns and trucks and tins of food were American, had been American for years. The whole Soviet advance ran partly on American steel and American rubber and American protein, and everyone knew it. But American soldiers on European soil, in numbers, making decisions about European ground, that came later, and it came more carefully, and it did not come far enough west to matter for Hamburg. The result is what you are standing inside. The office building is 4 stories and Soviet administered, and your job is translation. German to English, and back again, the paperwork of a city learning to function under new management. Import permits, property assessments, the careful, bureaucratic language of people who need things from each other, and cannot yet speak the same words. You are useful, because you are in between. Not German enough to be suspect, not Russian enough to be authority, not American enough to be absent. There is a Marshall Plan. You have seen references to it, American money going into reconstruction. But it stops at a line that runs somewhere through central Germany, the western slice, the British zone, the French zone, the narrow American corridor. What's here, north and east, is different. Soviet administered does not mean Soviet owned, but it means Soviet shaped. And the shaping is visible in the notices on the walls, the flag on the post office, the 2 young soldiers on the tram who wanted to be somewhere else. The bomb exists, and America has it, and that fact sits underneath everything like bedrock under wet ground. You cannot see it, but it determines the shape of what stands on top. The Soviets know it. The British know it. Everyone at every table in every room where lines got drawn knew it. Whether it made the lines more stable or simply made the argument about where to draw them less violent, you cannot say. You push open the office door, warmth. The smell of coal heat and old paper. A woman at the front desk looks up and nods, and you nod back, and unbutton your coat and hang it on the hook that has your name on a small card tucked into the frame. German name, English hand. You sit down, pull the first folder toward you. Begin. The tram home runs slower in the evening. You find a seat near the back where the window is a little fogged from other people's breath, and you settle into it. Coat around you, the day's weight in your shoulders, the folder closed and left behind on the desk where it belongs. The city moves past in the half-dark. Street lamps on, not all of them working, throwing yellow pools onto wet cobblestones. A woman walks quickly with her head down. A cart horse stands at a corner, patient and enormous, breathing steam. The buildings go past, one by one, the clean new brick and the old scarred walls and the gaps, always the gaps, the city's missing teeth dark against the sky. You let your eyes go soft. The tram rocks on its rails with a regular, unhurried rhythm, a sound that is part metal, part wood, part the particular weight of the city pressing down through the tracks to clatter and sway. clatter and sway. The glass is cool against your temple where you lean into it. Your hands are in your lap. Still now, all day they moved, pen across paper, page turned, stamp pressed, pen again, and now they simply rest, and the stillness in them spreads up through your arms slowly, the way warmth spreads, unhurried, working inward. The two soldiers from this morning are not on this tram. Different faces, or no uniform faces at all. A man with a newspaper folded to a small square, reading in the poor light. An older woman with a string bag, something heavy in it, her eyes closed. The boy of perhaps 12, sitting very straight, watching the street as if he has been given the job of remembering it. The tram rocks. Your breath slows to match it without you deciding that. In through the nose, the coal smoke, cold city smell of Hamburg evening. Out again, a long easy out, your chest dropping, your shoulders dropping with it, the wooden seat beneath you, solid and real. The Ulster again, on the left, dark water, one lamp reflected in it, pulled long by the small chop, a line of light going down into nothing. The city slides past. You are warm inside your coat. Your eyes are heavy, pleasantly, the way eyes get when the body has decided the day is done. The tram rocks on. 5 years pass the way occupation years do. Not quickly, not slowly, but in layers. New notices replace old ones in the wall by number 14's gap. The gap itself fills. Eventually, 4 stories of that same clean brick. A family on each floor by spring of 1951. The chemist gets a new sign. The tram route changes twice, then changes back. You learn more Russian, not fluency, but enough. Enough to catch the soldiers' conversations. Enough to know when something in a document means what it says, and when it means something else. It is 1955 now, and the office has moved to a larger building near the harbor. You walk to it through October again. Hamburg has given you many Octobers, and the city around you is neither the ruin it was, nor the thing it is still becoming. It is a third thing, the city that has learned to be itself inside different walls. The Soviet flag on the post office is faded now. They put up a new one 2 years ago. Brighter red, sharper hammer, crisper sickle. And that one has faded too. The climate here does not favor ceremony. The harbor is busy. That is the thing people in the western zones do not always understand, or do not want to. The harbor works. Ships come in from Sweden, from Denmark, from the Baltic ports, from further, grain mostly, and machine parts, and the particular categories of goods that move through the administered economy, not freely, not by price alone, but steadily in quantities that keep the city fed and the lights on and the trams running. Not prosperous, that is a different word, but working. You have a radio now, a small one on the shelf above your desk at home. The BBC World Service comes in clearly on good nights, the American Forces Network too, broadcasting from somewhere in the British zone. The signal carries, especially in winter, when the air is cold and the frequency sits down low and steady. And you listen sometimes to both in the same evening, the British voices and then the American ones. And the difference is subtle but there. The British speak as though they have been awake all night worrying about this. The Americans speak as though they have recently arrived and are still deciding what to think. Both of them are talking about Germany. They are always talking about Germany. The line runs roughly along the Rhine in the south and cuts northeast through the old Prussian lowlands and reaches the Baltic somewhere east of Kiel. West of it, a federal republic, rearming now, American and British and French troops stationed along the river like a hand laid flat on a table. East of it, several different things at once. The Soviet zone formalized into something with ministries and a flag, and a government that governs, and then the occupied territories further east, and then Poland, and then further. NATO exists. You hear the word on the radio constantly, but it stops at the Rhine. Bavaria is in it. The Rhineland is in it. Hamburg is not. What Hamburg is, precisely, is a question people here answer differently depending on when you ask, and who can hear. An administered city, officially. A free port, practically. A place where the paperwork moves east and west, and the goods follow the paperwork. And somewhere in that movement, there is a living for translators, who sit in the middle and make the language work in both directions. You are still useful. You walk through the harbor gate, show your pass to the guard, Soviet uniform, young face, the same slightly elsewhere expression they all have, and go to your desk. The first folder is already waiting. The cafe is on a side street, off the Rue de Rivoli, small enough that the owner knows which tables wobble and steers you away from them without being asked. You sit near the window with a coffee and a newspaper. The coffee is real now. That took years after the war. The supply chains finding themselves again, the colonies settling into whatever they were becoming. And it is good, dark, and slightly bitter, the cup warm in both hands. Rain on the glass, the street outside wet and quiet, a woman with an umbrella moving past, a delivery man stacking crates against the wall of the tabac opposite. Paris, the paper is folded to an inside page. Vietnam again. The French pulled out of Indochina the year before, and the story did not end. It rarely ends when an army leaves. It only changes shape. And now the Americans are sending advisors, a word the paper uses carefully. And the Vietnamese are sorting themselves into factions, and the factions into alignments, and the alignments into something that looks, at a distance, like it is becoming somebody else's war. You set the paper down. The man at the counter is polishing glasses. He does this continuously, a steady circular motion, the cloth squeaking faintly on the wall behind him. A small framed photograph, too far to read the caption, but you know the type. A liberation photograph, a street crowd, arms up, faces opened, Paris, 1944. The British came in from the south and west, the Free French with them, and the city fell with less fighting than anyone expected. Americans were not here for that. You knew that going in, knew it the way you know geography, a fact that shapes everything without announcing itself. In America, the war is the Pacific. Pearl Harbor, and then the island names, Midway and Guadalcanal, and Iwo Jima, and then the desert in New Mexico, and then the terrible light over Japan. Those names sit in the American chest, the way Stalingrad sits in a Russian one, or the Blitz in a British one. Wait in a specific place. Europe is something Americans read about. The garçon brings a second coffee without being asked. You did not order one, but you were clearly going to, and he knew, and now it is there. You wrap your hands around it. At the corner table, two men are talking in low voices, academics, possibly. One has a bag overflowing with folders. The other keeps making a gesture like he is smoothing something flat. You catch fragments, Algeria. The word sits differently here than it would in London or Hamburg. Here it is not foreign policy. It is weather. It is always present. It changes the mood of a room. It has not resolved. Decolonization runs on its own schedule, and the schedule pleases nobody. Outside, the delivery man is done. He pulls his jacket closed, tucks his clipboard under his arm, and walks away up the street at a pace that says he has 4 more stops, and the rain is not a surprise. A student at the bar has an American magazine, Life, the cover facing out. A photograph of a naval ship, the Pacific somewhere, the light very bright on the water. She is reading it the way people read things from far away, with mild curiosity, as though it describes weather in another hemisphere. Which it does. You drink your coffee. The rain on the window thickens slightly, then eases, and thickens again. The two men at the corner table reach some conclusion, and one of them writes something down. The woman with the umbrella passes, going the other direction now. The same umbrella, different pace. The cafe holds all of this without comment. You finish the second coffee. The cup goes back to the saucer with a small sound, and you sit with your hands in your lap and let the cafe hold you for a moment. The rain, the glass polishing, the low voices of the academics reaching some new disagreement, a smell of coffee grounds and wet wool, and the particular warm-nothing smell of a room that has been a room for a long time. Your shoulders drop. You had not noticed they were up. A chair is good, solidly made. The kind of chair that has no ambition except to hold a person's weight. And it does that without complaint. You settle further into it. The rain on the window makes a sound like something being smoothed, repeatedly, patiently, with no particular goal. Outside, through the glass in the rain, a child crouches on the wet pavement across the street. She has chalk, pink chalk, which should not survive this rain but is somehow surviving it. And she is drawing something, a shape, a house maybe, or a person, or simply a shape, the logic of it entirely her own. She draws with her whole arm, a long sweep, then stops and examines what she has made, then adds a line, then another. The rain falls on the drawing, and the drawing stays. For now, she does not look up. Whatever she is making is more important than the weather, or the street, or the cafe window, or you watching through it. It exists, her drawing, on this, occupied, unoccupied, administered, liberated, divided pavement in this altered Europe, this world that went differently, and still went, still arrived at morning, and coffee and chalk and rain. Your eyes are heavy. The warmth of the cafe is all the way through you now, in your back, your hands, the soles of your feet. Your breath comes long and easy, out longer than in, your chest dropping and not in any hurry to rise again. The child draws another line. The glass polishes. The rain falls. The altered world softens at its edges, the way things do when the body decides it has held enough for one day, and the details begin to go. The child, the chalk, a pink line on wet stone. Gently, one by one, like lights going out in a city settling into night. The child stands up. She looks at what she has made on the pavement, and the rain takes it. Slowly, the pink lines going pale and then gone, and she puts the chalk in her pocket and walks away without looking back. You watch the empty pavement. Here is the thing about all of it, about Hamburg with its Soviet flag and the translated documents, and the tram and this cafe and the long way the world took to arrive at this wet Paris afternoon. A single man sat in a single room on a single morning in December 1941, and he chose. The world bent around that choice. The war still ended. The darkness that drove it, the camps, the killing, the years of ruin ground into people and soil, that did not vanish with a different choice. It ran its course on a different map, on a different clock, with different cities holding the weight of it, the same weight, differently distributed. He could have chosen otherwise. In this telling, he did, and the world bent that way instead. And here you are in a Paris cafe in the rain, with 2 cold coffees and an altered Europe outside the window. And the morning of 11th December 1941 is so far back now it has nearly no shape. Just a room, a typewriter, a man, a pause. That is all history ever is, at its hinge. A pause. And then, whatever comes after the pause, The academics gather their papers. One of them laughs, briefly, at something the other says, and then they are serious again. And then they leave, coats on, out into the rain, folders pressed to their chests. The cafe is quieter now. The woman behind the counter sets down her cloth and stands with her hands flat on the bar and looks at nothing in particular, resting her eyes on the middle distance, the way people do at the end of a long stretch. The rain continues. You are still in the chair. Your hands are warm. The rain on the window goes soft, then softer, until it is just a sound without a source, like something heard from another room or from the edge of sleep. You are leaving Paris, not walking out, not standing, just receding. The chair releasing you gently, the smell of coffee going last, a trace of it, and then that too is gone. What remains is weight, the specific, unremarkable heaviness of your body exactly where it is right now, pressed into the mattress, settled into the particular shape of your own bed. Feel that, the surface beneath your shoulders, the pillow holding the back of your head, the blanket where it sits across your chest. You have been carrying yourself through a long story. You can put it down now. Your legs are already letting go. You can feel it, that slow loosening below the knee, the small muscles giving up their grip, the feet going soft at the edges. Your hands are open, door nearly open. Let them open the rest of the way. Breathe in. Your ribs lift just slightly. Breathe out. They settle. The room around you is your room. Whatever dark shape that is in the corner, you know what it is. Whatever sounds come from outside, traffic or wind or the particular silence of your particular neighborhood at this hour, you know those sounds. They belong to your night. They are not asking anything of you. Your shoulders are heavy against the bed. Your jaw is loose. There is no typewriter in any room near you, no clerk in a corridor, no frozen army on a step, no tram through a divided city, no rain on a Paris window, just the ceiling above you, or the dark where the ceiling is. Lend your own breathing, going in, going out, going in, steady and slow and entirely ordinary, the most ordinary thing in the world. You are here. Your body is here. The night is quiet. Breathe out slowly. Let your eyes stay closed. There is nothing to decide. You woke in this one, out of every world that could have assembled itself around that morning in December 1941. Every version that hung in the air while the typewriter paused. You woke in this one, not another. This one, with its specific light through its specific window, and the particular people who were there when you opened your eyes for the first time, and all the years that followed. Yours, unrepeatable. That is a small thing. That is an enormous thing. This world has its cruelties. You know some of them personally. You have felt the specific weight of the ones that belong to your life, the losses that have your name on them, the years that cost more than they should have. This world is not gentle in every direction. It does not owe you gentleness, and sometimes it has not offered any. And still, the coffee that has tasted like coffee, the particular face of someone you love, the way a room feels when you come back to it after a long time away, and it is still there, still itself, still holding the shape of your life inside it. The morning you did not expect to be good, that turned out to be good anyway. The small, ordinary mercies that arrived without announcement, and that you may not have named at the time, but that your body remembers, somewhere, in the way it carries itself, all of it contingent, all of it dependent on 1,000 pauses, 1,000 rooms, 1,000 mornings where something tipped one way instead of another. You did not choose this world. Nobody chose it for you. It simply arrived, the one that formed, the one that held, and you are in it, in your bed, in this specific night, breathing. That is fragile beyond all calculation. That is worth something. You do not have to do anything with that right now. You do not have to be grateful in any active way. Do not have to think about it or hold it or examine it. Just let it sit somewhere beneath your breathing, quiet, the way warmth sits in a room after the fire has gone down. You are in the world that made you. It is still here. So are you. Close your eyes. You are still in the cafe, or you were. The rain has stopped, or you have stopped hearing it. A chair is gone from beneath you in the way chairs go when sleep is close. Not removed, just no longer relevant, the body forgetting it needed supporting. Paris is dissolving, the tram through Hamburg, the Soviet flag, the Studebaker trucks heading north into the dark, the sergeant in his pit by the Polish river, feeling the different soil, the typewriter in the Chancellery corridor, and the pause, and the man behind the closed door deciding. All of it dissolving now. Here is the truth of it. None of it happened. This was a story, a careful one, built on real foundations, real dates, real armies, real hunger and cold and the actual weight of what that winter cost. But the hinge, the pause, a man who chose differently, that is fiction. In the world that actually happened, the typewriter did not stop. Hitler stood before the Reichstag on the morning of 11th December 1941, and he declared war on the United States of America. And Congress answered him within hours, and the shape of the next 4 years was fixed. You wake in that world, the one that formed, the one that held, the one that, through its particular sequence of rooms and mornings and pauses and choices made by people you will never know, in places you will never see, assembled itself into the night you are lying in, right now, in your bed, with the ceiling above you and the quiet around you. And somewhere, right now, in that world, in this world, your world, there are small rooms, unremarkable ones, a desk with papers on it, a phone about to ring or not ring, a person sitting with a choice they may not yet know is a choice, on a quiet morning that looks like every other quiet morning, and something is turning. Not dramatically, not with a typewriter and a Reichstag and the weight of armies behind it, just turning, the way these things always turn. Let that drift, let it go soft at the edges, the way the chalk went soft in the rain, the way the cafe went soft, the way everything goes when you stop holding it. Sleep well.